All right, last leg of the Karnataka elections, and I'm now joined by Dr. Sachin Reddy. Now, he is pretty popular on social media, especially Twitter, and he has been analyzing the election so far. And I'm also told that he got 2018 bang on. So, welcome, Dr. Reddy. It's a pleasure to have you on the lead. Now, my first question, and it's obviously, it's almost hilarious what is going on as far as this whole issue of banning Bajrang Dal and the Prime Minister converting it into a war cry, saying Bajrang Bali ki jai. And now the Congress is, DK Shivakumar has promised to set up a board and instill the values of Anjaneya in students if they come to power. How are you looking at this? Isn't it like pretty hilarious?
Yeah. Thank you, Sandhya, for having me. Yeah, I do see this as a serious damage control. In fact, if you watched yesterday's interview of DK Shivkumar, you would see that he does acknowledge that it was a huge misstep on their part, and it was an oversight, is what he said. It was basically an oversight that how it got into the wordings. He said the wordings is where the problem is. It's not specifically, they did not mean to name Bajrang Dal. So what it has ended up doing is it has made a lot of the otherwise dormant cadres very active. So it may not affect the voters per se. To a big extent, it is not a big vote catching issue. For Congress it is, of course, because they were sensing that the reason they did this is because they were sensing that somewhere the consolidation of Muslim votes was not happening the way they wanted it to. So they were seeing that it's getting stuck somewhere around 70%, and the rest is getting splintered here and there. And they want, for their plan to work out, they need close to 85% of Muslim votes, because they are sensing that when they went into the polls, they were very sure that somewhere the Lingayats will back them to a better extent than 2018. That did not happen. So that became clear with data. The more data that they received from the ground, that became more clear. That you can see how they started talking about Lingayat leaders being sidelined or backstabbed, and all the hue and cry about getting Saudi and Shetter, which they also later realized that it's back sidetracking them from the main issue. So when they realized that they don't have as much support from the larger Hindu communities, they had to polarize the election in sort of a way to get Muslim votes much more than what they were getting. So that kind of backfired. They did not expect the pushback to be so bad, I think. So they thought that it will just get buried in the volume of their manifesto, and it not get so picked up on so much. And they probably did not expect PM to pick it up so well and make a huge issue out of it. So they did not see that coming. Once that happened, now they've gotten an input that it's causing a serious issue, especially in close seats. A lot of seats in northwestern Karnataka, or Kittur Karnataka, what we call as, are very close this time. And some of the marginal seats in the coast where they stand small chance of winning, those were the places where they are getting battered right now. So obviously they are on a back foot. If you notice any of their body language when the reporters ask them for response about this, it's very clear that they're on a huge back foot.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's very obvious that they're on the back foot. But what you're saying is very interesting. You're saying that the Muslim community is not voting en masse for the Congress. Can you explain a little more about that? Why do you say that?
In pockets, yes, like they do vote very strategically. Of course, their main goal has been in many elections. It's very clear that they would want to take on the support the candidate who is best placed to defeat BJP. That has been a clear trend, and data supports that across the spectrum, across states. But what happened over the past few months in Karnataka is SDPI got traction. They have strong candidates in about 10 or so, I think a dozen seats, where they could create some trouble in the sense that they could take away the margin which is required for the Congress to win. And the second one, JDS had started getting some traction in some pockets. So when this consolidation question comes, who to back in specific seats, as long as the trend is very clear, it doesn't need to be communicated much. But when the trend is not clear, for example, in many places in Old Mysore, so if a particular community, a person from a particular community wants to vote in such a way that their principal opponent loses, they need to pick the right person. So in Old Mysore, it is not clear whether Congress is ahead or JDS is ahead. So this move is mainly to target Muslims in Old Mysore, Muslim voters in Old Mysore, and to an extent in the coast they do have some support from OBCs in the coast, and a big chunk of support from the minority voters, both Christians and Muslim voters. So they wanted that last little leftover threshold to reach, where they wanted to go. But I think it has been a miscalculation on their part.
So you were talking about the consolidation of the Lingayat community on your Twitter handle. So if it wasn't very long ago, maybe even say January, up to January or February, I think the Lingayats were also a little confused because I mean there were a number of things, right? One was HD Kumaraswamy's comment about BJP having going to have a Brahmin chief minister, that is Prahlad Joshi. That caused some confusion among the Lingayat voters. The second issue was, I guess, in a sense that it was not very clear what role Yediyurappa was going to play in
Right.
the election this time. And the third thing was also that the Panchamshalis were asking for additional reservation. There were protests being held by the Kodal Sangama seer. So, what do you think has changed for the Lingayat community? You are saying they have consolidated. So, why do you think they have? What is the reason behind it?
So the reason, why do you think Kumaraswamy, who has no stake with the Lingayat voters, has no stake basically? He does not depend on Lingayat voters to get even 2 or 3 seats here or there in North Karnataka. They don't depend on Lingayat voters. In the first place, why do you think he came up with this argument, this straw man argument that BJP was going to have a Brahmin chief minister? So they, much before any of us can sense what is happening on the ground, who is most connected to the ground? The politicians and their men who are on the ground, right? So whatever we can do, we go around, talk to people, but they sense the movements, large social movements. The very genesis of this Brahmin, the so-called Brahmin chief minister straw man argument was the fact that Lingayats had started consolidating for BJP. So they have been with the BJP for the longest time in the new millennium. Since '99, they have stuck with BJP lock, stock, and barrel. BJP basically had around 3 to 4% of the votes outside of Lingayat, Brahmin, and other upper caste votes in '99, when they got around 20% of the votes. That has gone on adding to it. So the peak was, of course, 19, when they got 50 plus percent. So if you notice what happened in 2013, when Yediyurappa walked out, Lingayat votes were vertically split. About 8% of the Lingayat votes went to, that is about half the Lingayat votes went to Yediyurappa, half of them went to, about half went to BJP, the rest to Congress. So Lingayats have always stuck with the BJP. The difference came in 2018. So in 2018, Lingayats did not vote to BJP as much as we all thought they would, because a part of the Lingayat community did buy into the argument. about the separate religion and the reservation. 15% reservation, it's a big number, the way it was sold to the community, and it was projected, there were a lot of seers who were for spearheading, of course, with their own ulterior motives. And these five big Lingayat leaders from Congress, so they had a Ganika, they had a Kudu Okaliga, they had a Banjiga, they had a Jangama, so they and Panchamsali. So they coalesced these leaders, even though individually they are nobodies outside of their own constituencies. They made a big fuss about this, and a big chunk of the community did buy into this argument. Post hoc, after the election results, a lot of us came to the conclusion that Lingayats consolidated in a big way to BJP. That is why BJP could win 104. But I disagree with this argument. Lingayats did not consolidate the way they did in 2008 or in 2019 or 2014 with the BJP. The difference is the outcome in Kittur. In Kittur, they would have won 40 seats, not 28, like they did in 2018, if Lingayats actually consolidated towards the BJP. They did not. They did not to the extent that they used to. That movement broke down completely, disappeared into thin air once the elections were done. Once the elections were done, it was quite clear. It will be Chief Minister is H.D. Kumaraswamy, and the Deputy Chief Minister from Congress, no one from Lingayat community anywhere close to the center of power. And it became quite clear moving forwards once the government fell and BJP came back to power. It became widespread among the community that their interests, their power interests, are served only and only with BJP. So, especially now, if you see all of those leaders who were in the forefront of the separate Lingayat movement, MB Patil sidelined, Vijayanand Kashyap now lost his own seat, sidelined. All the other, Shamnu Shivshankarappa was somewhat opposed to it, again very old. Vinay Kulkarni cannot enter his own seat because he's out on a murder charge. So there is no credible face with Congress who can get those Lingayat votes back. So the biggest chunk of the Lingayat votes have shifted back to BJP. This is the
So
reason why.
MB
Yeah.
Patil is also not cutting it.
No, MB Patil is nowhere in the picture. So he is not being projected as anyone, because everyone, to the people on the ground, to the voters, it's quite clear. If Congress comes to power, it will be Sidramaya and DK Shivkumar, maybe
Right.
Parmeshwar and Kharge. So where are the Lingayats in the picture? Of course, he'll get a plum ministry, but that doesn't mean that there is a power center. So there is nothing that Congress can offer apart from Basava Tattva and all these flimsy things like painting a flag of Basaveshwara and hanging it on their necks while campaigning. Apart from these flimsy things, I don't think Congress has anything to offer. And this started happening long back. This started happening around 21, 22, not today. This started happening 2 years ago. The movement was quite clear. Even though there is an anti-incumbency, a lot of floating voters, by floating voters, I mean mostly the micro OBCs, some of the upper castes, and some of the Lingayats, the floating voters, have shifted towards Congress, but that shift is being somewhat watered down by the negative shift of the Lingayat voters in the places where it matters, in North Karnataka and Central Karnataka. So this is why all of this you could see sort of an internal adjustment, the Brahmin strawman argument, taking in Saudi and Shetter, saying things like Yediyurappa is being scared, threatened by BJP to go on campaign, all sorts of things.
All right. So you're basically saying that there is a possibility that we might see greater Lingayat consolidation towards the BJP this time than
Yes,
in 2018.
yes. So you have a Lingayat chief minister. What? So do you think any of these arguments of BJP sidelining Lingayats is going to cut the corner? It is not. They want to use the card that BSY was removed, but was BSY removed and replaced by someone else who is not from the community? No. That is the reality that people know, voters understand. So it, of course, the Congress ecosystem in the state would want to project otherwise, but it hasn't been able to make a big impact on ground.
All right. Okay. Now coming to the other castes. I mean, we're talking about SC left, SC right. We have your, the smaller OBC groups, the Vokalikas. How do you think these caste groups are voting?
So there has been a consistent trend over the past three election cycles, I would say, outlier being 2013, that SC voters have moved, scheduled caste voters have moved away from Congress and towards BJP. This has been a consistent trend that has shown up in data as well. 2019 was the peak of it, where BJP got almost net same number of SC voters as Congress did, but the difference is in the details. So BJP gets a lot more left SC and non-left non-right SC voters, and Congress gets a lot more right SCs. So right SCs make up about 40% of the chunk, left SCs make up about 30%, and the non-left non-right SCs like Bhovis, Banjaras, they make up about 30%. So this trend has been consistent, and the trend in fact grew in 2019. That sort of scared them, scared Congress, in a sense that this is a big social coalition which is probably difficult to break, probably difficult to defeat with just the other rest of the SCs and Kurubas and chunk of Okaligas. So what they decided was to pump money once the internal reservation thing came. They pumped a lot of money for disinformation campaigns to disturb the dynamics, to create caste divides, and especially with the Banjaras, because they make up a big chunk of voters in Hyderabad, Karnataka, and Central Karnataka. They can tilt scales in about a dozen seats, I would say, a dozen to a dozen and a half seats. So they did try that, but right now it looks like some amount of the SC support for BJP has gone down. It has gone. That is undeniable. It's very clear from the ground. It is among both left SCs and among non-left, non-right SCs. But one interesting fact that I have found is that the right SCs have started finding more traction among BJP. So, for
SC
whatever
right.
reason, yes, SC right, for
Wow.
whatever reason, especially in South Karnataka. This is not happening all over the place, but especially
Okay.
in South.
Limited to South Kannada.
Yes, places where BJP has started to be in contention, where previously it was not. So, if you remember the North Bangalore Modi road show, throughout the road show there were two people next to Modi. One was Sadanand Gowda, the other one was Chalwadi Narayan. So
Correct.
he is a key player or in key card that BJP is playing in South Karnataka to attract right SCs. In fact, he was quite active in their caste organization for many years before he came to BJP. So I do find that it might offset some of these shifts that are happening in non-left, non-right SC and left SCs away from BJP. But I still think this election there will be a net loss for BJP when it comes to SC voters. Now, when it comes to Vokaliga voters, what Congress hoped for was presence of DK Shivkumar and basically elevation of him to almost the same image and same level as Sidramaya will propel a big chunk of Vokaligas to move to Congress. That has not happened. So he is still till today he is not seen as a mass leader even by Vokaligas. In parts, in pockets, yes, in pockets they do identify with him. In pockets where JDS may not be very strong to defeat BJP, they might prefer Congress and shift en masse to Congress. But that big shift that they were hoping for, that has not happened. So in old Mysore, essentially a big chunk of the Vokaligas remain with JDS, second probably with Congress, and a small chunk with the BJP. So BJP has tried to enter that territory, but I don't think they have been able to be so successful. But what has happened in South Karnataka for the BJP is never before kind of consolidation of Lingayats of South Karnataka. South Karnataka Lingayats are more or less unorganized. They are in sizable numbers in many places, in districts like Tumkur, in districts like Chamrajnagar, in pockets of Mysore, including Varuna, including
Right.
Siddharamaya's own constituency,
Yes.
and Chamundeshwari. So, in parts, they do have a big presence, but they're usually mostly unorganized. What has changed, however, in the last 3 or 4 years is Vijayendra. So Vijayendra has been able to groom many third, fourth level leaders at Gram Panchayat levels across these districts, from Hassan to Mandya to Mysore to Chamrajnagar to Tumkur and even Bangalore rural. So this is a positive factor for BJP, but may not be enough for them to win a lot of seats. It might turn the tide for, let's say, in Sakleshpur or Belur or even Hassan, offset some of the Vokaliga losses, but it's still not enough to make a big difference. But what is happening is, where did these unorganized South Karnataka Lingayats vote previously? They voted mostly for Congress. The ones which strongly identified with Sangh and BJP, of course, they voted for BJP. But the ones which were mostly floating voters, they sided with Congress, because there is a power tussle between Lingayats and Vokaligas in some pockets of South. So that might actually squeeze Congress to the corner in South, unlike what a lot of people are predicting. This is one reason why I believe JDS is not going below 30 or 32 seats. So this is one reason why I strongly feel this. So this is how roughly things stand in among the other communities. But yeah, OBCs I did not touch upon. So the strange thing about OBCs in Karnataka is that they are somewhere around 17, 18% overall, all of them put together. But there is no big organization. There is no unity or sort of an organization within among the other smaller OBC groups. Some of them prefer Congress, some of them prefer BJP, and this has been a trend for a long time. 2018 was an inflection point where more OBC voters preferred BJP over Congress. This is what offset a lot of Lingayat vote loss that happened in North and Central Karnataka. This is what offset for the BJP. Now, that is happening or not, it's very hard to say unless you're strongly connected to the ground, because it's very hard to come across these people in large
Correct.
chunk. They
They're,
they are
yeah, they're in
usually
small pockets.
they are also underrepresented in samples as well, even in polling data. Because I was going to some of the third party polling data. Usually they are underrepresented and they're scaled up. What happens is, when if you have 100 sample, it becomes really hard to get 20 OBC people from OBC communities, 20 people from OBC communities. Usually it so happens that there is about 10 of them, and then you adjust the scale and make it 20 and rebalance. When you do that, a lot of data gets lost or you inflate it. So right now it looks like a lot of the floating OBC voters are with Congress, and some of the ones which have been with BJP consistently, like Tiglas, Yadavas, like Koli Samaj, the Ganga Matastas in the North Karnataka, and a lot of these who come, the non-Kuruba 2A group. 2A is a big chunk in Karnataka. 2A is the category, OBC category. Kurubas is one group. The non-Kuruba 2As usually prefer BJP, so they seem to be sticking with BJP. But other smaller groups, it's really hard to say right now.
Okay. All right. Now, and let's talk a little bit about the pre-poll surveys that have come out so far. Um, how do you look at them? I mean, I think most of them, except maybe one or two, most of them have given a pretty large edge to the Congress. What are
Right.
your views on this? Do you think these are accurate, or has something changed post the sampling?
So I would say, take it with a huge pinch of salt. Most surveys got Karnataka wrong in 2018. The election which was probably the easiest to predict in Karnataka was 2018. 2013, of course, after 2013, 18 was the easiest. and most of them got wrong because they bought into the pro incumbency messaging that Congress was doing, and they overestimated the Lingayat separate Lingayat movement effects of that movement. But with 2023, the election is so complex. It is so multi-dimensional. Of course, all elections always are multi-dimensional, but this election especially has so many X factors that it becomes extremely difficult. I would say about 30% of the voters have not made up who they want to vote for today, right now. I have seen some of the third party polling data recently. About 25 to 30%, every fourth to third respondent says that they don't know who they're going to vote for. Or
Wow,
they
that's a pretty large jump.
they'll sit out the election. This has not been reflected in any of the pre-poll surveys that have come out.
Right.
And of course, I would take out some of them and throw them out because of obvious issues. C voter, for example, has had terrible track record when it comes to Karnataka and South India in general. So I would not give a lot of credence to that. Lokniti CSDS has never gotten a single election right in Karnataka. So I would discount that again. And other some survey that popped up recently that was shown to be not a survey later. A lot of people came out and said they never heard of this, and data collection may not have actually happened in the way they claim. So I would discount that. So if you leave out these three outliers, there is no one survey which gives a big margin to anyone. Even Sea Water, in fact, held back on some of their numbers and downgraded Congress and upgraded
Yes.
BJP. I think some of them are going to release their final pre-poll surveys in the next coming few days. I think tomorrow or the day after. I think that a lot of changes that have happened in the last 3 weeks are going to reflect in these. If you see the most credible polls when it comes to Karnataka, the regional channels tend to get the numbers more or less right. You see the last elections polls, Digvijay, Suvarna News, these got the numbers direction at least more or less right, and those have put BJP very close to Congress, or have given a small edge to Congress, or in some cases have given a small edge to BJP. So according to those, it's pretty tight right now, which is the case. No one knows that. No one can certainly say that BJP or Congress are winning with 120, 130, those kind of numbers.
Okay. So, what are your calculations? Your pre-poll survey, basically.
I don't have hard data to go by. I do not. I have not done any of the data collection by myself or have an access to pan state numbers. But based on my analysis of trends so far, and based on the my reading of the mood of the people, it would seem like right now BJP is somewhere around 90 to 95 seats. Congress is somewhere around 95 to 97. So probably ahead by a sliver, and JDS is somewhere around 30 seats. So, why I say this is extremely dynamic is you will see it on 13th of May when the votes are counted. There will be about 75 seats, I would say, where the margin is less than 5% of the vote. So, many of the seats are extremely close right now. I'm not saying some of them won't flip or won't change, or even a 2% swing in one direction won't make this a one-sided outcome. But right now, that possibility seems extremely slim. I do see a hung assembly with either BJP or Congress getting maybe 10 seats more than the others. Again, the the only caveat is, where are these floating voters? Because usually the floating voters are very silent in Karnataka. You ask them, they say we will vote for whoever does the best job for us. They'll give you a generic answer and they'll just run away. So it's really hard to catch that segment, and this is the problem that many of the national so-called national polling agencies had in 2018. That was the reason why they thought Congress was winning 120, 130 seats in the state. It could be the reason why now also nobody is able to commit to which side the polls, which side the elections are headed.
All right. I think, is there anything else you would like to add? Like maybe there's something that I have missed out, which you might want to speak about.
One thing is this: the nature of Karnataka politics is usually it's so hard to win elections for the second time here.
So thank you very much, Dr. Sachin Reddy.